You cannot feed every failure in this city. Officer Trevor Mills spoke from beneath the shelter of his patrol car door while cold rain swept across the sidewalk. Danielle Brooks did not look up. She remained crouched beneath the dark awning of a closed hardware store, balancing a bowl of hot chicken soup between both hands as steam curled into the wet evening air. The elderly white man sitting against the brick wall wore a faded military coat, cracked brown shoes, and an expression too proud to ask for anything. His silver hair was soaked at the edges. His fingers trembled when Danielle placed the bowl in front of him. "I am feeding a man," she said quietly, "not fixing a statistic." Trevor laughed and glanced toward his partner, Officer Cole Ramsey, as if kindness were some private joke between them. The old man raised his eyes. They were tired, but not empty. Something alert remained behind them. He studied the badge on Trevor's chest, then the patrol car parked beneath the yellow streetlight. Before we continue, subscribe and stay with this story, because the name this forgotten man whispered next would connect Danielle to a truth her family had waited nearly 25 years to hear. Danielle unfolded a clean cloth and draped it over the old man's shoulders. It had once belonged to her father, Sergeant Raymond Brooks. The fabric was worn soft from years inside a cedar box, but a faint stitched eagle still showed near one corner. Trevor stepped onto the sidewalk. "You keep bringing food out here, more people will come. Then businesses complain, and somehow we are expected to clean it up." Danielle finally looked at him. Rain darkened the shoulders of her mustard-colored coat. "He is sitting quietly beneath an empty building. That is how it starts." Trevor pointed toward the bowl. "One meal, one blanket, and suddenly everybody thinks this block is a shelter." Cole remained near the patrol car, uncomfortable but silent. Danielle noticed his eyes pause on the old man's coat. Beneath the frayed collar was the shadow of an old insignia, nearly hidden by age and rain. The elderly man lifted the spoon slowly. He took one careful taste, then closed his eyes as warmth reached him. Danielle waited without rushing him. Behind them, traffic hissed along the wet street. The neon sign from Brooks' Corner Diner glowed half a block away, painting the puddles red and gold. "You made this?" the man asked. "My mother's recipe," Danielle said. She believed soup could solve almost anything. A faint smile touched his face. "Your father believed something similar about coffee." Danielle froze. The rain continued tapping against the metal awning. Trevor stopped smiling. The old man looked at the cloth around his shoulders, then back at Danielle. Raymond Brooks always carried coffee strong enough to wake the dead. The bowl shifted slightly in Danielle's hands. She had never told him her last name. She had never shown him the photograph hanging inside the diner. Her father had disappeared during an overseas military mission when she was 9 years old. The army had eventually declared him killed in service, but no one had ever explained the final hours of his life. "How do you know that name?" Danielle whispered. The old man's expression changed. Confusion moved across his face like fog covering a road. He looked down at the soup as though he had forgotten where he was. "Name?" he asked. "Raymond Brooks." Danielle leaned closer. "You just said my father's name." The old man pressed one hand against his coat pocket. Something round and metallic shifted beneath the fabric. Trevor stepped forward, impatient again. "This conversation is over. He needs to move along." Danielle stood between the officer and the old man. "Not until he finishes eating." The man reached into his pocket and closed his fingers around an old military challenge coin. For one brief second, Danielle saw an eagle beneath 4 worn stars. Then he hit it again and whispered, "Your father should have come home." Danielle kept her eyes on the old man while Trevor's words faded beneath the rain. "Your father should have come home." The sentence remained between them, too precise to dismiss and too painful to accept. She reached for the challenge coin, but the man closed his hand around it and drew it back toward his chest. "What is your name?" she asked. He looked at her for several seconds. "Walter," he finally said. "Walter Hayes." Trevor exhaled impatiently. "Danielle, this is exactly why you do not encourage people out here. They tell stories. You start believing them. Then everyone gets disappointed." Danielle stood slowly, keeping herself between Walter and the open sidewalk. "He knew my father's name. He probably heard it somewhere. Trevor pointed toward the glowing sign of Brooks Corner Diner. Your last name is written across the building. He knew how my father drank his coffee. Trevor had no answer for that, so he changed the subject. He still cannot stay here. Cole glanced toward the diner, then toward Walter's soaked shoes. The temperature is supposed to drop into the 30s tonight, he said. Trevor looked at him. And? Cole's jaw tightened, but he said nothing more. Danielle lifted the empty soup container and offered Walter her hand. Come inside. You can dry off before I close. Walter studied her palm as though accepting help required more courage than refusing it. Then he took it. His grip was weak but careful. Trevor shook his head. If he causes trouble, that is on you. He has caused less trouble than anyone else standing here, Danielle replied. She guided Walter toward the diner while rain tapped against the cloth on his shoulders. Brooks Corner Diner occupied the ground floor of a narrow brick building on Madison Street. Danielle lived in the small apartment above it with her mother, Evelyn, whose knees no longer allowed her to work the breakfast shift. Every morning at 5, Danielle turned on the griddle, brewed the first pot of coffee, and prepared enough biscuits for customers who wanted two and people who could afford none. Her father had once called the place his second home. After he disappeared, Evelyn kept it open because closing the doors felt too much like admitting he would never return. Inside, the diner smelled of onions, coffee, and warm bread. Danielle led Walter to the booth nearest the heater. On the wall above him hung a framed photograph of Sergeant Raymond Brooks in uniform, smiling beside a transport aircraft. Walter looked up. His shoulders stiffened. That was taken at Fort Bragg, he said. Danielle stopped beside the counter. How do you know? Walter's eyes remained fixed on the photograph. 3rd Logistics Support Battalion. 1999. He spoke the words without hesitation, then pressed both hands against his temples. No. That is not right. I should not be here. Danielle poured coffee into a thick white mug and placed it before him. You are safe here. Walter touched the rim but did not drink. Raymond used to put 2 spoonfuls of sugar in his coffee when no one was looking. Danielle felt her throat tighten. Her mother had teased Raymond about that habit for years. It had never appeared in any newspaper or military record. Did you serve with him? She asked. Walter looked down at his coat. For a moment, his mind seemed to clear. He served under me, he whispered. Then confusion returned, and the certainty left his face. Danielle sat across from him. Through the front window, Trevor's patrol car remained at the curb. Cole stood beside it, watching the diner with concern. Walter opened his hand beneath the table. The old coin rested in his palm, its eagle worn smooth, 4 stars still visible around the edge. Danielle leaned closer. What does that mean? Walter closed his fingers again. It means men trusted me once. He looked up at Raymond's photograph. And one of them paid too much for it. Walter's final words settled over the booth like a shadow. Danielle wanted to ask what her father had paid for, but the old man's face had already changed. The clarity vanished from his eyes, leaving him distant and uncertain. He lifted the coffee mug, took one small sip, and stared at the photograph as though it belonged to another life. You should rest, Danielle said. Walter shook his head. Rest is dangerous when memory is waiting. She did not understand, but she heard the fear beneath the sentence. Outside, Trevor's patrol car pulled away from the curb. Cole remained in the passenger seat, looking back through the rain until the diner disappeared behind them. Danielle closed the blinds, turned the sign to closed, and brought Walter a plate of eggs, potatoes, and toast. He ate slowly, careful not to waste a bite. Between mouthfuls, his gaze kept returning to Raymond's photograph. He was brave, Walter said. My father? Danielle asked. Walter nodded, then frowned. Or maybe I dreamed him. Danielle sat across from him. You knew his unit. You knew the year. You knew how he drank coffee. Walter pressed his thumb against the challenge coin hidden in his palm. Some memories stay in the body after the mind loses the road. Danielle looked at the 4 stars around the worn eagle. Were you an officer? He gave a tired smile. Everybody was something once. A soft knock came from the kitchen doorway. Evelyn Brooks stood there in a blue robe, one hand resting on her cane. She had heard voices from the apartment upstairs and come down despite the pain in her knees. "Who is this?" she asked. Walter looked at her, and the color drained from his face. He rose too quickly, gripping the table for balance. "Mrs. Brooks." Evelyn stopped. "Do I know you?" Walter's lips moved, but no answer came. His hand trembled around the coin. Danielle stepped beside him. "He says he served with Dad." Evelyn studied the old coat, the silver hair, and the frightened expression. "What was your name?" "Walter Hayes." The cane slipped slightly against the tile. Evelyn caught herself on the counter. "General Hayes." Walter closed his eyes. The title seemed to strike him harder than any accusation. "No," he whispered. "Not anymore." Danielle looked from her mother to the men in the booth. "You know him?" Evelyn moved closer, disbelief widening her eyes. "Raymond mentioned a General Hayes in letters before the mission. He said the general never asked a soldier to carry something he would not carry himself." Walter lowered his head. "Raymond was kinder than the truth." Evelyn's voice tightened. "What truth?" Walter stared at the photograph. For several seconds, only the refrigerator motor and the rain against the windows filled the diner. Then he said, "Your husband saved lives that night." Danielle felt her breath catch. "Whose lives?" Walter looked at her, and for one clear moment the confusion lifted. "Mine." Evelyn gripped the back of the booth. Walter continued, each word measured as if pulled from somewhere buried. "The convoy lost contact. Raymond found the evacuation route. He stayed behind to guide the last men out." Danielle's eyes burned, but she did not look away. "Why were we never told?" Walter opened his mouth, then stopped. Panic crossed his face. He stood suddenly, reached for his coat, and backed toward the door. "I should not have come." Danielle stepped after him. "Walter, please. You cannot say that and disappear." He looked at the photograph one final time. Some promises survive longer than the people who made them. Then he placed the challenge coin on the table, pulled open the diner door, and walked into the rain before Danielle could stop him. When she reached the sidewalk, the street was empty. Back inside, Evelyn lifted the coin with shaking fingers. Along its edge was a sequence of numbers. Danielle turned over her father's framed photograph and found the same sequence written in faded ink across the cardboard backing. Danielle barely slept. The challenge coin remained on the kitchen table beside the photograph, both marked with the same faded sequence of numbers. By sunrise, the rain had weakened to a gray mist, and Brooks' Corner Diner smelled of coffee, butter, and the first biscuits of the morning. Evelyn sat in the corner booth with the coin between her palms. "Raymond wrote that number after his final letter arrived," she said. "I asked what it meant. He told me it was safer if I did not know." Danielle traced the worn stars with one finger. Walter knew him. He knew what happened. Before Evelyn could answer, the front bell rang. Trevor entered with Cole behind him. Trevor removed his wet cap and looked around the diner. "We received another complaint about the men from last night." Danielle's shoulders tightened. "He left hours ago." "Good," Trevor said. "Then we can keep it that way." Cole noticed the coin on the table. His expression changed immediately. "Where did you get that?" Danielle covered it with her hand. "Walter left it." Cole stepped closer, careful and respectful. "May I see it?" Trevor gave a short laugh. "It is probably something he bought at a flea market." Danielle looked directly at him. "You mocked him before you knew anything about him. Do not do it again." Trevor's smile disappeared. "I am trying to keep this block from becoming a gathering place." "This is a diner," Danielle replied. "People gathering is the point." 2 breakfast customers turned in their booths. Trevor lowered his voice. "If you continue allowing people to sleep here, we can review your occupancy permit and sanitation compliance." "He did not sleep here." "You kept him after closing." "Because it was cold." Trevor pulled a small citation booklet from his jacket. Compassion does not exempt a business from city rules. Cole looked at him. There was no disturbance call from inside the diner. There was a complaint. From whom? Trevor did not answer. Danielle felt heat rise beneath her collar, but she kept her voice even. You are turning a bowl of soup into an offense because you do not like who received it. Trevor began writing. I am documenting noncompliance. Cole reached toward the coin, stopping before touching it. This is a command challenge coin, he said quietly. The eagle pattern and 4 stars are not common. Trevor continued writing. Or it is a convincing copy. Evelyn stood with the help of her cane. The men who carried it knew my husband's unit, his habits, and the night he disappeared. Cole looked at the sequence around the edge, then at the same numbers behind the photograph. This could be a mission reference or unit archive code. Trevor tore the citation from the booklet and placed it on the table. It could also be nonsense from a confused old man. Danielle picked up the paper. A review of her business license had been requested. The words were dry and official, but the threat beneath them was clear. You should not need proof of rank before treating someone with dignity, she said. Trevor turned toward the door. And you should not risk your livelihood for strangers. The bell sounded as he stepped outside. Cole remained behind. Through the front window, Trevor waited beside the patrol car, watching him. Cole lowered his voice. He is wrong about the coin. Danielle studied him. Will you say that when he is standing here? Shame moved across his face. I should have said it last night. He took out his phone and photographed the sequence, then wrote down Walter's name. I have a contact at the Veterans Affairs Regional Office. I can ask them to check whether he is registered as missing or vulnerable. Evelyn looked toward Raymond's photograph. And the mission? Military archives may have the answer, but not quickly. Danielle folded the citation and placed it beside the coin. Then start with finding Walter. Cole nodded. Before leaving, he looked back at her. Do not close the diner because of this. Danielle lifted the coffee pot and filled a customer's cup. My father did not leave this place open so fear could shut it. Outside, Trevor watched Cole return to the patrol car. Inside, the old challenge coin caught the morning light, and somewhere across the city, Walter Hayes sat alone beneath a veteran's memorial, trying to remember the promise he had made to Raymond Brooks. The morning crowd thinned by 11, but Danielle barely noticed. The citation remained beside the register, folded once, its official language heavier than the paper itself. 2 regular customers had canceled lunch reservations after hearing that police had questioned the diner. A supplier called to ask whether the business was in trouble. Every small consequence seemed to confirm Trevor's warning that kindness could become expensive. Evelyn watched from the corner booth while Danielle wiped the same clean counter 3 times. You do not have to prove anything today, her mother said. Danielle looked toward the empty seat where Walter had eaten. I am not trying to prove anything. I am trying to find him before the temperature drops again. Near noon, Cole entered alone and removed his cap before approaching the counter. His expression told her he had found something. Walter Hayes is listed in a National Vulnerable Veterans Alert, he said. He left a private care residence outside Atlanta 4 days ago. Danielle set down the towel. Does he have family? His wife died 2 years ago. No children. The residents contacted several military associations, but the alert did not reach our precinct until this morning. Evelyn touched the challenge coin. Was he really a general? Cole glanced toward the front window before answering. The Veterans Affairs Office would not confirm his full record over the phone, but the name, age, and photograph match. They told me not to approach him aggressively if we find him. His memory can shift under stress. Danielle looked at Cole. Did you tell Trevor? Yes. And? Cole's jaw tightened. He said the men still violated loitering rules. The bell above the door rang before Danielle could respond. Trevor entered carrying a folder. Good. Everyone is here. He placed the folder on the counter and opened it to a notice requesting an expedited inspection of the diner's occupancy and health permits. You kept an unidentified person inside after business hours. The city has a right to review the situation. Danielle stared at the notice. You know he is a missing veteran now. That does not erase procedure. Cole stepped closer. There was no safety incident. Trevor looked at him. You are getting personally involved. I am correcting incomplete information. Trevor turned back to Danielle. Sign here acknowledging receipt. She did not reach for the pen. You mocked a hungry man, ignored evidence about who he might be, and now you are punishing the person who fed him. Trevor's expression hardened. I am enforcing rules. Rules are supposed to protect people. Danielle's voice remained steady. Not protect pride. The room went silent. A customer near the window lowered his coffee cup. Trevor pushed the paper closer. Refusing to sign will not stop the inspection. Danielle picked up the pen and signed her name. Then she folded the notice and placed it beside the first citation. Inspect everything, she said. The kitchen, the books, the storage room. You will not find neglect here. Trevor closed the folder. We will see. He turned toward the door, but Cole stopped him. What happens if Walter returns? Trevor looked back. He leaves. Danielle moved from behind the counter. Not hungry. Not confused. Not alone. Trevor gave a humorless smile. Then you may lose this diner over a stranger. Danielle looked at Raymond's photograph above the booth. My father disappeared helping men he barely knew. I can survive losing customers. I will not survive becoming someone he would not recognize. Trevor left without answering. The patrol car pulled away a minute later, leaving Cole at the curb. Danielle opened the diner door and stepped into the cold afternoon. Where would Walter go? She asked. Cole checked the address on his phone. There is a veterans memorial about 3 miles east. The care resident said he often talked about meeting someone there. Danielle grabbed her coat, filled a thermos with coffee, and packed soup into a sealed container. Evelyn wrapped the old cloth around the food bag. Bring him home, she said. Danielle and Cole drove through streets still shining from the rain. At the memorial, bronze names covered a long stone wall beneath bare trees. Walter sat alone on a bench near the far end, his shoulders bent against the wind. Danielle stepped out of the car carrying the soup. Before she reached him, Walter placed a folded piece of paper on the bench and walked toward the memorial wall. Written across the top was Raymond Brooks's full name, followed by a sentence Danielle had waited 25 years to read. He saved all of us, and I never told his family why. Danielle stopped beside the bench, the soup container warm against her palms while the wind moved through the bare trees. Walter stood before the memorial wall with one hand resting near Raymond's engraved name. His shoulders looked smaller there, beneath rows of men and women remembered in stone. Cole remained several yards behind, giving them space. Danielle picked up the folded paper. The handwriting shook across the page, but the words were clear. Raymond had discovered that the evacuation route was about to close. He guided the final vehicles through, then returned for 3 soldiers who had been separated from the convoy. Walter had ordered him to stay with the group. Raymond refused to leave anyone behind. He brought the soldiers back, but he never reached the last transport. Danielle read the final line twice. I promised I would tell his family that he chose mercy when fear would have been easier. Walter turned toward her. I carried the promise for 25 years, he said. Then I began losing pieces of time. Names disappeared. Roads changed. Your father stayed. Danielle's eyes filled, but her voice remained steady. Why did no one tell us? Walter looked down. The mission report was sealed. Officials gave your family the version they were allowed to give. I told myself I would return when the restrictions were lifted. Then grief became routine, and routine became silence. He touched the edge of the memorial wall. I failed him after he saved me. Danielle moved closer and held out the thermos. You remembered him when the world had forgotten the details. Walter accepted the coffee with both hands. Steam rose between them. He deserved more than memory. So did you, she said. Walter looked at his worn coat and gave a faint, broken smile. I was a 4-star general once. Men stood when I entered rooms. Now most people look through me. Danielle opened the soup and placed it beside him on the bench. Your rank did not make you worthy of this meal. Walter's eyes lifted to hers. Then why did you help me? Because you were hungry. The answer seemed to loosen something inside him. He sat slowly, and Danielle wrapped her father's cloth around his shoulders again. Cole approached only after Walter nodded. The Veterans Affairs Office is looking for you, he said. Your care residence is worried. Walter stared into the soup. I did not mean to disappear. You did not disappear, Danielle replied. People stopped looking carefully. Cole lowered his gaze. I should have spoken sooner when Officer Mills mocked you. Danielle looked at him. Why did you not? Because staying quiet felt safer than challenging him. Safe for whom? Cole had no answer. His phone vibrated. He checked the screen, then looked at Walter with sudden disbelief. The Veterans Affairs Office confirmed your record. They also contacted 2 officers who served under you. They are coming here. Walter's expression tightened. No ceremony. They only want to know you are safe, Cole said. Danielle sat beside him while the afternoon light faded across the stone. No one spoke for several minutes. The spoon touched the bowl. Wind moved through the trees. Then, beyond the memorial entrance, 2 black government vehicles turned onto the drive. Walter looked toward them, confusion and recognition crossing his face at once. As the vehicles stopped, uniformed officers stepped out, followed by 2 generals. Both removed their caps. Both walked toward the old man on the bench. And before anyone said a word, they raised their hands in salute. The 2 generals held their salute while Walter remained seated beneath the memorial wall, a paper bowl of soup warming his hands. General Michael Reeves lowered his arm first. Beside him, General Susan Grant did the same, her expression carrying relief, respect, and something close to grief. General Hayes, Reeves said softly. Walter looked behind him as though the title belonged to someone else. You found the wrong man. Grant stepped closer. No, sir. We finally found the right one. Danielle watched Walter's fingers tighten around the bowl. His faded coat, weathered shoes, and silver hair seemed almost impossible beside the 4 stars on the general's uniforms. Cole stood several yards away, silent beneath the bare trees. Reeves turned toward Danielle. Are you Danielle Brooks? She nodded. Your call helped us locate a man the Army has been searching for since he left his care residence. Officer Ramsey made the call, Danielle said. I only brought Walter food. Grant looked at the cloth around Walter's shoulders. That was more than most people gave him. Walter lowered his eyes. Do not make her kindness sound extraordinary. It should be ordinary. Reeves absorbed the correction without argument. You are right, sir. Danielle held the folded statement about her father against her coat. He told me Raymond Brooks saved your life. Both generals looked toward the engraved name on the wall. Grant removed one glove and touched the stone gently. Your father saved more than one life. She explained that Raymond had found a damaged service road during a failed evacuation and guided several vehicles through before communications disappeared. He returned for 3 separated soldiers even after the final transport had begun moving. Walter had ordered him back. Raymond chose to help the men who could not reach safety alone. Reeves continued quietly. The official report protected details of the mission, but it also hid the full measure of what he did. General Hayes spent years petitioning to have Raymond's record reopened. Walter stared at the ground. I stopped when Evelyn's letters were returned. Danielle's breath caught. You wrote to my mother. Many times, he said. Some were held for review. Others never reached her. Then my wife became ill. After she died, time stopped behaving like time. Grant opened a leather folder and removed a sealed document. The review was completed last month. Sergeant Raymond Brooks has been approved for a posthumous commendation recognizing his actions and the lives he preserved. Danielle did not reach for the document immediately. For 25 years, her family had received silence, careful phrases, and unanswered questions. Now the truth arrived beside a cold bench because she had refused to let a hungry stranger eat alone. Reeves looked toward Walter. Sir, we need to return you to medical care. Walter shook his head. Not until the citation against her diner is withdrawn. Cole looked up. How did you know about that? I heard the officer threaten her, Walter said. His voice had regained the authority hidden beneath confusion. A woman offered shelter from the rain, and he answered with humiliation. A patrol car entered the Memorial Drive. Trevor stepped out, having been sent after Cole reported Walter's location. He slowed when he saw the government vehicles and the two generals beside the old man he had mocked. Reeves faced him. Officer, do you know who this is? Trevor stared at Walter's worn coat. I was told he is a retired general. Walter stood carefully, Danielle supporting one arm. My rank is not the lesson. Trevor's face tightened. I did not have all the information. Danielle met his eyes. You had enough information to know he was cold and hungry. No one spoke. The wind moved the cloth on Walter's shoulders, revealing the faded eagle stitched by Raymond's own hand. Grant handed Danielle the sealed commendation. Your father saved a general, she said. Danielle looked at Walter, then at the unfinished soup on the bench. And last night, he was still treated like he was worth nothing. Walter turned toward Trevor. 4 stars did not make me human today. Her kindness did. Trevor stood beneath the gray afternoon sky with both hands at his sides, stripped of every easy explanation he had used the night before. The generals did not raise their voices. Walter did not demand punishment. Danielle simply held her father's commendation against her coat and waited for him to face what he had done. I was enforcing the rules, Trevor said at last. Walter looked toward the memorial wall. Rules without judgment become excuses. Trevor glanced at Danielle. I did not know he was a general. That should not matter, she replied. You knew he was an old man sitting in the rain. The words landed more heavily than anger could have. Cole stepped forward and removed the folded citation from his pocket. The complaint against the diner had no documented safety violation, he said. I reviewed the call record. There was no report of violence, damage, or disruption. Trevor looked at his partner. You went through my report. I corrected what I should have challenged from the beginning. General Grant opened another folder. The city liaison has already been contacted. The inspection request will be reviewed for possible misuse of authority. Danielle shook her head. I do not want special treatment because 2 generals appeared. Grant nodded. You will not receive special treatment. You will receive the fair review that should have happened first. Trevor's posture softened. For the first time, he looked less like an officer defending a decision and more like a man seeing the human cost of it. What can I do? He asked. Danielle looked toward Walter, who still wore Raymond's cloth around his shoulders. Start by correcting every statement you made about my diner and about him. Trevor nodded. I will. Then spend one evening serving meals there. His eyes lifted. Danielle continued, not for a photograph. Not in uniform. Learn the names of the people you called failures. Trevor looked at Walter. Would that be enough? Walter gave a tired smile. An apology is not measured by how quickly it is accepted. It is measured by what changes after it is spoken. Cole offered to help connect the diner with the Veterans Affairs Outreach Office. General Reeves promised mobile health visits, housing assistance, and transportation for veterans who could not reach existing services. Danielle listened, then made one condition. No one gets asked for rank before receiving a meal. Reeves nodded. Agreed. Walter was taken back to his care residence that evening, but only after Danielle packed him soup, bread, and a thermos of strong coffee with 2 spoonfuls of sugar. Before entering the government vehicle, he placed the challenge coin in her hand. This belongs with Raymond's family. Danielle closed his fingers around it. Keep it until you remember that you are still part of one. Walter's eyes filled, and he held the coin against his chest. 3 days later, Trevor returned to Brooks Corner Diner wearing plain clothes. He brought corrected reports, confirmation that the citations had been withdrawn, and no excuses. Danielle handed him an apron. The first man he served was a homeless veteran named Samuel who asked for extra toast. Trevor wrote down his name and remembered it. Cole worked near the door with a Veterans Affairs counselor, arranging appointments and temporary housing. Walter sat in the corner booth beneath Raymond's photograph while Evelyn poured his coffee. The room smelled of soup, bread, and rain drying from winter coats. No one saluted him. No one needed to. Danielle placed a bowl before him, and Walter looked around at the long table filling with strangers. "Your father would have liked this," he said. Danielle touched the framed commendation now hanging below Raymond's photograph. "He would have asked why it took us so long." 3 months later, the long table outside Brooks Corner Diner stretched beneath strings of warm lights, covered with bowls of soup, fresh bread, coffee, and handwritten place cards bearing only first names. No rank was required. No proof of service was requested. Veterans, unhoused neighbors, police officers, military families, and local residents sat shoulder to shoulder while the evening sun turned the diner windows gold. Danielle moved between them carrying a basket of biscuits, wearing the same mustard-colored coat she had worn the night she first found Walter beneath the hardware store awning. Trevor served coffee in plain clothes, without a badge or an audience waiting to praise him. He remembered that Samuel preferred extra toast, that Leonard needed decaffeinated coffee, and that Mrs. Alvarez always saved half her meal for her husband at the shelter. His apology had begun as words, but repetition was turning it into character. Cole stood beside a Veterans Affairs coordinator, helping an elderly former mechanic complete a housing application. He no longer waited for someone else to challenge what was wrong. When a younger officer referred to one guest as a vagrant, Cole corrected him quietly. "His name is Daniel." Inside the diner, Evelyn sat beneath Raymond's photograph and the framed commendation that finally told the truth about his final mission. She watched Walter enter through the front door wearing his faded military coat, freshly cleaned but still familiar. His memory remained uncertain. Some mornings he recognized everyone. Other days he needed Danielle to remind him where he was. Yet he always remembered the smell of strong coffee and the photograph above the corner booth. General Reeves and General Grant followed several steps behind him, but neither wore a dress uniform. They came as volunteers, carrying trays instead of folders. Walter stopped beside Raymond's picture and placed the 4-star challenge coin beneath it. "He carried men home," he said. Danielle stood beside him. "And you carried his story." Walter looked at her, his eyes clearer than they had been in weeks. "You gave me enough kindness to remember it." Danielle touched the old cloth folded across the back of his chair. "You were worth remembering before I knew anything about you." Trevor approached with a bowl of soup and set it gently before Walter. "2 spoonfuls of sugar in the coffee," he said. Walter studied him, then nodded. "You listened." "I am learning to." No speeches followed. No cameras waited outside. The people at the table simply passed bread from hand to hand while steam rose into the cooling air. Danielle stepped back and looked at what one meal had become. Her diner had not been saved by generals, medals, or public attention. It had been saved by the same thing that had opened its doors every morning for years, the belief that dignity should be offered before a person proves who they once were. Above the entrance, Danielle had hung a small wooden sign painted by Evelyn. It read, "No rank required. No one eats alone." Walter lifted his spoon. Trevor filled another cup. Cole opened the door for him and hesitating outside. Danielle placed Raymond's cloth around Walter's shoulders as the last sunlight entered through the glass. Kindness had not made her weak. It had made an ignored man visible, returned a father's honor to his family, and forced powerful people to remember the purpose of their power. But as laughter and quiet conversation filled the diner, one question remained for everyone listening. If no generals had arrived and Walter had never worn 4 stars, would he still have deserved a warm meal and a place at the table?